Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. So, a couple of things before we start is you may notice that the wall behind me is kind of white, and that's because why not? I'll tell you the whole story. Kiri decided that in the snow we should go through our hats and gloves. Because we were going to go in the snow, and we went through the hats and gloves, and we had some quite a few hats. So Kiri said, well, let's throw some of these woolly hats out. So we did. We went through the woolly hats, pulled the shelves, all the hats and gloves off the shelf, and the cabinet was, to be honest, a little bit broken at the back. So we said, well, do we get these shelves? Let's get rid of them. So we pulled the shelves apart and kind of moved them out. And then Kiri said, well, this wall looks pretty dirty and grim behind here. Okay, so we started painting the wall, or stripping the wall ready to paint it. And then we kind of got across to this part here, and Kiri said, that's a really ugly piece of wood in front of the fire. What's behind it? And so we removed the piece of wood, and the fireplace fell apart, and so just from getting rid of some hats, we're now rebuilding the fireplace, painting the walls, and building a whole new unit over there. So that's why the office is in a little bit of a state. So it's just a word of warning. If you want to throw out some woolly hats, then just throw them out. Don't go too deep, because end up days of work. So that's why you see a pair of step ladders in the corner. So that explains why there's a bit of mess behind me. I apologise. It's got nothing to do with what I was going to talk about tonight. So, depth demons. So, as you know, depth for me is a bit of a bugbear. If you've been watching the videos, the live streams, you know that I say that knowing how deep you've gone is only good for one thing, and people only do it for one thing. And having that number in your head, and it is only good for telling people down the pub how deep you dived. Of course, there comes a point that's an accurate depth. Okay? Obviously, there comes a point where it's super important. Obviously, if you're diving and you're setting up a safety system, then your buddy needs to know how deep you're diving and how long it's going to take. And for example, when I was Herbert Nietzsche's coach for his 111 meter constant weight dive in Egypt, I had calculated how long the dive would take. He was going a bit beyond what other people could do at the time, so I had to extrapolate the information that we had at the time from some of the dives he'd done, some of the warm-up dives, some of the prep dives, sorry, not warm-up dives, the preparation dives, and I'd calculated when he had hit the bottom, and I was 2 seconds out. But we needed this so we could work out how long the dive would be, and that kind of thing. And in fact, when he did his 82 meter no fins dive world record, it was a little bit more guesswork. He had been to the depth quite a few times, but hadn't swum up. So we wanted to work out exactly how long the dive would take. So he was doing some shallower dives, no fins, and we were timing it. So, and on the competition day, his 82 meter world record, no fins world record, I'd calculated how long a dive would be, and I was 1 second out on the calculation, which is useful. We had to have this information, so I knew when he turned whether we were on a good time or not, or whether kind of outside of good time. So, but we were on the edge of what human beings could do on both of those cases. And I've got some interesting stories about the 214 dive, 214 meter dive. Again, calculated the times, but we were working with dives that people had never done before. So, the accuracy is quite important. But when you're talking about shallower depths, people kind of flashing their computers on on Facebook, it's just, this is how deep I can go. And weirdly enough, I'm going to talk about that and the problems of that in a minute. But while we were clearing out the hats from the cupboard, we pulled down, and there was this thing, and on the top of the cupboard, and this was my first ever competition tag. So back in the day, so this was 2001. 2001 must have been 2001. It was in the early days of competition, like, they started 98-ish, serious modern, as we would recognise in modern competitions, and I hadn't quite worked it out. So the tags we had, actually, for the depth, they clipped them on before your dive. So they pulled up, they had the tags in a rack, and they pulled it up and said Marcus Greatwood, 23 meters, and clipped it on and sent it down the rope on a carabiner. And when you got to the bottom, the idea was you were going to grab your tag and bring it up and kind of, yay. But of course, if somebody before you had failed to grab their tag, there was more than one tag there. So it didn't actually matter. You could pull up any tag, because as long as you got there, it didn't matter. Yeah, and so this was a tag. This was actually my tag, which kind of they sent down. Just interesting. And this was another one from the year later. I think a year later, or maybe. They're quite massive, quite big, and they took hours to cut these and prepare them. And it was a couple of years later than that they realised that if you can pull up any tag, then you might as well just have all the tags exactly the same. Just bring up any one, so they could kind of set them at the bottom. And then interestingly, I was pushing the technology of the time, and this next one, I'd put Velcro on the back, so I could stick it to a Velcro pad on my suit. So that was it. And then the year after this, I think pretty much, so this was the World Championships in 2000, and must have been 2003, 2004. But again, it had my name. I still had to grab your own tag. Oh, this is the Sony. This is 2004. The Sony tag. Real kind of, you knew you had a tag in those days. Anyway, we found them on top of the cabinet. Anyway, just a little bit of history. But it is kind of serious kind of point there, that when you're in a competition, the point is to go to the bottom of the rope. That's your objective of the dive. That's a competition dive. But there's a worrying trend that everybody who's on Facebook has seen. From what but it's I'm struggling to talk on this one, because it's so upsetting and dangerous, and just the wrong efficacy. So flashing your computer, putting a picture of your computer on Facebook. This is how deep I go. I get it. I understand. You want to show off how deep you can go. I can understand that. But there seems to be a trend now where people are just going as deep as they can on an open rope. So unlike a competition where there's a depth set, they're going down and just taking their dive computer as deep as they can. Which, I mean, if you've watched any of these, that I don't like the whole how deep can you go kind of thing. In competition, there's a kind of a set so you can get your head around it. But just going down an open rope, and how do we know it's an open rope? Because people are kind of well, here's a couple of examples that are pulled just randomly. Now, I'm not saying anything specific about these people. These are literally, I don't even know who these people are. I have no idea. It's just, this is the kind of thing we're coming up. So, Happy New Year, new depths. 78.2 meters on a single breath. And thank you for doing it. 0.2 of a meter. Now, I say this every time when people quote under a meter, okay? Which hand was the computer on? Which hand was the computer on? So you grab the rope with this hand, and this hand kind of you grab the rope with this hand, and this hand, well, in my case, it's 1.8 meters apart. Okay? Which hand did you have the computer on? And if this is an open rope, did you dangle your hand, or did you just stop? And this is a deep dive. This person here is going seriously deep. But if you're going to quote a competition discipline, a variable weight, which is a recognized discipline with rules, you'd have the computer on your ankle, because that's what you can do in variable weight. You can have the computer on your ankle. Did this person have the computer on their ankle? Did they have it on their wrist? And even if you're going head first and you have it on your ankle, when you turn, the legs are going to go deeper than your hand. So it just opens up loads of questions that, knowing it was 78.2 meters is, I don't understand it. Why give the 0.2? If the computer was set, and I think this is a Sunto D9 or D6 or whatever it is, I'm not sure they have a salinity setting. So the difference between fresh water and salt water is this is from memory. So at 10 meters, roughly, the difference is about 30 centimeters or so. Okay, so if you go to 10 meters, and it's in salt water, and the computer's set to fresh water, it'll be 10 centimeters. It'll be 30 centimeters out. That's 30 centimeters. Okay, that's 30 centimeters, and they're counting 20 centimeters. So, and this computer doesn't have a salinity setting. Yeah, that's at 10 meters. This person's at past 70 meters, so the difference is going to be quite a lot. 30, maybe nearly a meter difference. Okay, now you may just go, well, it's nobody dives deep in a lake, but this could be in a Red Sea, or it could be in the Mediterranean, and the salinity difference is quite marked. So the error that you're working on this 78.2 meters, the error, depending on which sea you're diving in, is more than 0.2. It's crazy. Why? It shows the person is desperate to have the extra 0.2. Okay. It's scary. It's scary because these people are just desperate to read every centimeter, even though it means nothing. Because if the salinity is wrong, it could be deeper or shallower by more than that. Next up, we've got this one. Now this will be my deepest dive in Dahab. Unfortunately, my body won't let me dive again for some weeks. They've injured themselves on a dive, but they're still proud of it. And I'm guessing it's a guy because it's a hairy wrist. And they're showing their dive computer 46.5 meters. Yet they injured themselves while doing it because my body won't let me dive again for some weeks. Some weeks, I'm guessing that's a lung squeeze. Whatever the injury is, that the body's not letting them dive deep for several weeks, yet they're still happy about it. They've injured themselves. They've probably torn their lungs And if it is a lung squeeze, they're coughing up blood, but they're still proud to show 46.5 meters. That extra half a meter, super important. Now this is a Sunto Freedive, so it's based on a D4, same software as a D4 effectively. This only reads on standard setting, once every 2 seconds. You can tweak it so it reads every second. So it could have read, bam, you could have gone deeper and back up by 0.5 of a meter easily in a second. Especially if it's on your wrist. Okay? Especially if it's on a wrist and you go like to turn round. You know, hold the rope here and but it's 0.5 meters deeper than his last personal best. But you injured yourself, so it doesn't count. I would not be proud of that. That photo would not be on my Facebook page, whoever you are. Thanks for the efficient training and a lovely introduction to hurting myself in Dahab. Here's another one. My dive watch shows that I spent just over 4 minutes at 11.6. This is a 4-minute hole, so they could have been there for, why 11.6? Why not 12? That's just crazy, because they were there for 4 minutes. It's not like they were, rushing, and they're high-fiving them for doing this. Fantastic. The rest of the session we practice mouthfeel techniques. Now, the fact they're learning mouthfeel is ridiculous, but that's not their fault. That's IATA's fault for having it in the IATA 4-star course. So they're learning mouthfeel on the IATA 4-star course, and they reach a new personal best in free emotion at 40.1. Now, IATA 4-star, this is their highest level freediving course for IATA, apart from going on into the instructors. Yet this person is on a course. So who is their instructor that is allowing them to do a 40.1 and clearly they're not comfortable, else you wouldn't count the 0.1. I mean, let's have a look. Got Sunto here. Now bear in mind the accuracy of a Sunto is 0.1. They don't give a plus or minus. I can't find it anywhere, but it's 0.1. Okay, so the minimum it reads is 10 centimeters, which is what this person said. So never mind which hand is your computer on, okay? If the sensor's upwards, it will read 40 meters. If it's downwards, it will read 40.1. So the 0.1 will change depending on which way round you have your dive computer. It's ridiculous that anybody would even be that desperate to have that 0.1. And then his mate did 40.7. New PBs. You're counting PBs less than the width of a computer at 40 meters on a course. This just mind-blowing. It's just so upsetting to see people who are meant to be at like a high level of freediving, which is all about relaxation and acceptance and being there and being in the moment, but counting 0.1 of a meter as a PB and then being beaten by his mate 40.7. Depends what rope you have, if you sat at 40 meters on a rope and the rope was a bit spongy and a wave went past, boing, you might bounce, but more than that you might not actually move. You could do static there and get more variation than that just by the bouncing around. It's on a buoy as well. Anyway, this is for me a really worrying trend, that people are so desperate to count, to put a number to the depth they can do, that they're counting these points. They're not counted by AIDA, not counted in competition, not counted in world records. So even these people who, so the people who are pushing the boundaries of human limits, it's 1 meter either way. But people who are doing less than that, people who are doing their 40 meters, are counting 10 centimeters. 10 centimeters. And more than that, this isn't on a rope where it's been set to a certain depth where they can't go any deeper than that. That their safety system is set up that they hit the bottom and they come up. Else they would say it was a 40-meter dive, or 41, or whatever. This is purely down to the computer. Purely, how deep can you take your computer? So the only thing I can think is that these people are doing this on an open rope. So they're just going down an open rope as deep as they can. But how deep can you take your computer on an open rope? Which the next step is, these people are not comfortable. They're pushing something, and they're on an open rope. And that last example, they're on an AIDA 4-star course. Their instructor is AIDA 3-star. I'd expect my divers to be relaxed, understanding, soft, accepting. AIDA 4-star, you should have that all dialed in. 40 meters should be bam, bam, bam. Because I don't teach to the concept that of depth is required for a qualification, but I do. So 40 meters should be dialed in. You should be able to do 40 meters like any day of the week, personal worst as we call it. Not getting a personal best of 40.1. In fact, I'm gonna have to look that up. I know for the AIDA instructor, 40 meters is the requirement. Yeah, I think it may be 36 for the 4-star, but it's been a long time since I've taught an AIDA 4-star. Or rather, in fact, it hasn't. I teach the AIDA 4-star, but my students who are getting signed off their 4-star, they're diving 50s and 60s, and that's the kind of comfort level we're looking at, and for me, that's the objective, is their awareness and their comfort at these deeper depths. And AIDA 4-star is an assistant instructor. If you go by their rules, you can assist on courses. So I'd expect my 4-star divers to be solid at these sort of depths, comfortable, aware, knocking it just like, if they're going to get signed off on these qualifications, which clearly this person was. Anyway, so a little bit of a rant there, just something that's just really been winding me up in the last few months, just more and more on Facebook. Lots of shots of their dive computers, as if it's not enough to tell people your depth, you've got to prove it. And then, but more than that, writing the decimals. Obviously, if you show your computer and it says 40.1, it says 40.1. You can't kind of deny what it says. But then to count it when you write out, that's diving on open ropes. Anyway, that's my rant. Next week, I thought I'd do a little bit more history if you want. So make comments if you want a little bit more of my history stories of back in the day. Yeah, that's it. That's what I thought I'd do. If I don't see you next week, Oh, there's some questions. Hang on, I've just had a call. Oh, whoa! My screens were set up wrong and I didn't see any of the questions. Oh my god, oh my god. So, it's all about the feeling. That's not a question. That's just a good statement 20 years ago. Okay, so what's the thing that concerns you most about the trend? Drowning? No, it's about the... so this is Ted asking this. It's about the people. Why are they doing these? The concerning thing is A, the danger, obviously, of people pushing on an open rope where there's no safety to stop them, which is, you know, scary in itself. But equally well, it's their obsession with these little numbers where they're clearly pushing themselves. And as it's a trend, people are going to be pushing it a little bit more. How can I do it a little bit more? How can I tweak it a little bit more? How can, you know, they will be, you know, how can I stretch my arm a little bit further? It's this idea of the small numbers, and it's not going to end well. It's really not going to end well in a sport that I love, because it's all about the feeling. And yeah, sure, I did such and such a depth and was feeling good there. I can see that. I can see why somebody would say that. But they're not saying that. One of the guys, which you said, he damaged himself and was proud of it. He was proud of doing a dive which damaged his body. Presumably he was coughing up blood and he was proud of it. That's the worrying trend. That's the worrying trend. Sorry. Started me off again, Ted. Gabby, it's a shame there isn't any talk of I felt great. Exactly, Gabby. Yep. I felt so relaxed, blah, blah, blah. It's just made this depth regardless of how I felt. Exactly, Gabs. Exactly. There you go. So they've actually answered it for you anyway, Ted. But well, thanks for joining in. I'm sorry that I didn't get those questions earlier. My screens were set up wrong and I couldn't see the questions. But next week, say some more freediving history from the annals of Marcus Greatwood's time underwater. Until then, have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, if you're in the Brighton crew, then message Alethea, who's doing some dry breath hold Zoom sessions to keep you you know, on track through the winter, in case there's a possibility of going abroad and diving. Apart from that, Free Fest is on 17th to 25th of July. It's in the UK, so it'll probably happen. And if you fancy going away, we have got a yacht trip just announced at the end of June. And yeah, so the end of June, the yacht trip in Greece just announced. Let us know if you're interested. Cheers. Thank you very much.